Hi everyone. Today I'm going to be doing a fairly quick video based on a blog post. Like what else is new? So many of my bookish videos are based on prior blog posts I've written, and I wrote this all the way back on the 3rd of July, 2012, like over 10 years ago now, and it's called Dystopia Does Not Equal Post-Apocalyptic. This is just one of my biggest literary rants. Like when did post-apocalyptic settings become dystopia? Like one of these things is not like the other. Like when was I sleeping when the definition of the genre changed? Am I like just another dinosaur over the age of 40 living under a rock? So anyway, I don't follow along with writing trends, and actually more often than not find myself rather annoyed by them. I feel the same way about naming trends and just don't see the appeal of many of the non-classic names on the top 100. And my secondary blog is called Onomastics Outside the Box. It's about, original, different names, like versions of like common names and worldwide cultures, just naming topics. But I have never, I mean, some names I like on the top 100, even though I wouldn't use them on children myself, but my tastes are, classic eccentric and classic unusual as they're classified. But anyway, maybe I could do a whole video on my names like taste. This is about the dystopia and the post-apocalyptic. So I've never subscribed to the school of thought that says at least kids are reading. Ugh, seriously, why does it take a trend to get kids to read? Why weren't they being brought up to love reading to begin with? And why weren't they raised with classic literature instead of trendy bestsellers? I mean, I know that makes me seem like pretentious and snobby and holier than thou, but like, sorry, not sorry. That's just how I genuinely feel. Of course, there's a time and place for like popular books and such like that, but I just don't see a lot of these like kids, or even I guess like people under the age of 30, sorry to sound like an ageist prick, getting into older books. I know some of them are. I've seen like some younger people on booktube who do enjoy classic literature more than current literature, but it's just so many people, they just like kind of take pride in, oh, I never read any books that are like older than like 1980 or 2000, or why would I want to read icky books about adults? Like, I only read YA, and I'm a 35-year-old soccer mom, and I even like to try to talk like the kiddies, and I say stupid already phrases that were already dated when they came out. Like, so today I may or may not be doing all the things and having all the feels and reading all the books and all the things, all the things, all the things. Can that dumbass phrase just like freaking die already? It always sounded stupid. A dislike of reading in a young child has to come from somewhere, like usually. The same way prejudiced attitudes in a young child are taught, not inborn. Although my little brother, we have no idea where this came from. Even when he was like, 2, 3 years old, and we would go to the library, he would just push books away from him in disgust. He's never really liked reading at all. It's just our parents love reading. Like I love reading. Like we would always go to the library. There were plenty of books in the house, even when we didn't have a lot of money. So our parents read to him at night. Like what in the world? Like I sometimes it does happen, but I still to this day I have no idea why my little brother is just so anti books and anti reading. But like most of the time it usually does come from somewhere. Like parents just like diminish or like dismiss, say, negative, nasty, like stupid things about books. Like why would you want to waste your time reading when you can just like go right into the workforce, or you should be working instead of reading? Or like why don't you want to have fun hanging out with your friends? Why would you want to waste time reading a book on a weekend or at night after you finish your homework? Just like do something that's not icky reading. But anyway, like totally rant over. I just don't get why post-apocalyptic books are so damn popular right now. Just as I don't get the appeal of paranormal romance or otherwise. Is that trend over yet? I did write this like a while ago. The one exception I'll make is ghosts, and I do like, some kind of like urban fantasy, magical realism, witch stories, but like again, totally getting off topic. I do have some ghosts in my book, handwritten magnum opus Cinnamon from time to time, including now in Saga 6, the 90s. when annoying Daphne is being periodically haunted and mocked by her 13th-grade grandma Jennifer, who has put some curses on her, among them a miserable, unconsummated marriage. I'm so long overdue to get back to that book. I was taught in English classes that a dystopia is a utopia gone wrong. Surprise, surprise. Not necessarily after a revolution. To me, a real dystopia is a book like 1984, Fahrenheit 451, Brave New World, and Yevgeny Ivanovich Zamyatin's We. I highly recommend that book. I was always that bookworm kid who genuinely loved 99% of the assigned reading in English classes and finished reading them way ahead of the rest of the class, like there were a couple of exceptions. I never felt forced to read these books. Off the top of my head, the only one I remember hating was Lord of the Flies, sorry, not sorry, long, complicated story that involves a teacher who violated the Establishment Clause and made every last freaking thing into a symbol. Oh, I could do a whole rant about that teacher and that book. Oh, just thinking about that class when she violated the Establishment Clause, it makes me so angry and disgusted to this day. And the other students who were in like different periods of English in the ninth, we were in the ninth grade, but this was taught at an eighth grade honors level because we were so advanced when we graduated to junior high. We skipped over seventh grade English and we went right into eighth grade honors English in the seventh grade. So anyway, all the other students in the ninth grade in that year who had her as an English teacher, they were like, almost everyone was like really angry and disgusted and horrified by her. And like a lot of us, we were just like stunned into silence, particularly when you're all of like 15 years old. Like, what? I can't complain about the teacher. I'm feeling upset and shocked and horrified, whatever, but I just don't know how I'm supposed to like go against what she's saying or object to her. Or in hindsight, I think I would have done this, but at the time I was just so in shock or didn't even like understand what was going on. So I just like kind of like effed up and messed up. The memory of this just makes me so angry to this day. And I still remember the day it happened because I wrote it in my journal on the May 19th of 1995. And that was also on Pete Townshend's birthday. I also didn't care that much for Maggie, a girl of the streets. I look at the synopses for all these YA post-apocalyptic books that are so hot right now, and I almost always am left wondering just why they're supposed to be considered dystopias. Having elements of one genre doesn't mean it should be classified as such if the defining characteristics aren't there. For example, a high fantasy that starts in the year 56,000 shouldn't be considered sci-fi just because it's in the future. I know, shocker. One of my futuristic books, Greentown, which I started, I think, like 2009, I'm saying like a few years ago in a post written in 2012. And I actively started putting the storyline and world building together in my head back in 1994. That's what I would consider a dystopia. It's set in Australia from 2023 through 2026. I know that's not going to be future much longer, and takes place in a self-contained, natural-minded village of sorts that started as a back-to-nature utopian experiment in 1982. I had a whole, like, stupid, pointless, like, prologue/introduction. You really do not need prologues, like, 99% of the time. They just feel, like, pointless, like, stupid, like, why? Can you not drop in relevant backstory as needed, like, later on? Why do this, like, whole boring, like, info dump backstory instead of just jumping right into the main story? Along the way, the citizens have made their love of 60s bands into a quasi-religion of sorts and divided their area into towns based on which band is the citizens' favorite. Our Shiro lives in Beetletown. I really need a more standout name for her than Terry. I mean, nothing against like anyone who might have that name. Like the name is perfectly fine, like either for a given name or a nickname. But for a protagonist these days, I like names that are more than just there, like the kind of name you really remember that stands out, like, you know, Octavia, like Wolfgang, Felix, like Amiel, Eulalia, just names that they're not necessarily even on the top 1,000. Like I said, classical eccentric and classical unusual is my onomastic jam. I'm just, when you fill your book with top 100 names, that's a whole topic for another video. It tends to date the book a lot quicker because it's tied to, you know, one era. For example, I was born in 1979. So for me, like, books for my generation, like I guess that would have I would have been, reading around the early mid 90s, whatever. Even though I did graduate super early to adult books, they would have like an example of that would have been most of the characters having names like Jennifer, Jessica, Jason, Amanda, like Stephanie, Danielle, Courtney, Amy. Like, well, it's harder to think of like trendy names for like guys because surprise surprise, females do tend to have names that go in and out of fashion quicker, and like men or boys are taken more seriously. Oh, they need a name that will stand the test of time. Like, why would we insult him with a name that's just going to seem like trendoid in another 20 years? But anyway, like rant over. And so then the protagonist comes to realize these people have turned their love of these bands into a rather creepy, cult like thing, instead of just celebrating the music and making it one of many parts of their lives. She realizes how oppressive it actually is and makes plans with her new guy friend turned boyfriend to get the hell out of there, along with a young girl who has fallen victim to the locals' wrath and her own younger sister. Her sisters, I think, are named Nikki and Vicky. Again, they need a better, more original, standout names than that. I mean, nothing against you if those are your names, or those are like you named your children that, or those are names of loved ones or whatever. But I just personally like names that they stand out. They're a little bit more like memorable. I mean, anyone could have a name like, like John or Jack or something like that, but you're just more likely to like it sticks in your memory better, a more like memorable character. I sound like a broken record, so just like think outside of the top 100 when you're naming characters. It'll be like so much better for everyone. And so anyway, that story is completely not post-apocalyptic, not even very far in the future, and soon won't be in the future at all, but definitely a dystopia in the classic sense. It's not far enough in the future, yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself, to be what I would consider sci-fi, but it's also not what many people now consider to be dystopia. And I would hate for anyone to assume I just mindlessly jumped on the dystopia bandwagon, even though I conceived of this story years before the trend. I really hate how a few high profile books in recent years, in the last, I guess, 10, 15 years at this point, really seem to have hijacked the true historical definition of dystopian literature. And I also, when I was still doing like contests for traditional publication, and this was like way before I had like radically rewritten and like significantly expanded the book formerly known as The Very First. It was since published under the title How Kei-Chen Became Sparky, based on the description, I guess, like the first, whatever, like 300 words or whatever. And this was like not a prologue, even. It was like an introduction or a preface. I've since edited that out of the published version. I mentioned like a secret society. The younger people in this fictional Atlantic City neighborhood are, part of, and someone like responding in the comments, not an agent, just a regular other writer reading the blog, said, I think you're like putting a secret society in because like paranormal is trendy. You're doing paranormal because it's trendy. And like nothing about this book is paranormal at all. It's historical. Since when did secret society become synonymous with like paranormal? Like it's more kind of like, I guess, like the Masons, a little bit like elements of that, like a little bit like quasi religion, just like a cultural thing. They like doing little rituals and stuff, but there's nothing paranormal. Just just let's think outside of the damn box. Like, don't let popular genres like hijack things. Like secret society is not inherently paranormal, just like a weird like creepy society is not inherently dystopian. Like post-apocalyptic is completely different from traditional dystopia, which is a utopia gone creepily wrong, as in like Brave New World, We in 1984 and Fahrenheit 451. So thank you guys very much for watching all the way through to the end. Please leave me a comment down below. I'm in arrears getting back to comments because I've been like focusing a lot on writing over the past few months, but definitely I will be getting back to like responding to all of my comments over the last few, like the 2 months or whatever, so very soon. So thanks again for watching. Bye.